Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening. I will call the June 25th Select Board meeting to order. I don't believe we have any changes to the agenda, so we will accept it as written and move to announcements. Libby?
Thank you. This meeting is being video and audio recorded. Mandatory outdoor water use restrictions remain in effect due to a level 1 drought condition. Mandatory restrictions limit lawn irrigation to 2 designated days per week based on street address. No irrigation allowed Friday through Sunday. So please check the town website. The link is on the select board agenda for this, and we've issued quite a bit of social media about it. So if there's a question, please check the website and or contact the water department directly. It's important that people adhere to these restrictions. We have free tours being given by our Natural Resources Department at the Brant Point Shellfish Hatchery. The tours are running on Tuesdays at 11 throughout the summer. Sign-ups open 2 weeks in advance, and again, the link is on the select board agenda. Starting June 29th, the Take It or Leave It facility will accept latex paint for recycling on Wednesdays and Sundays. Please check the website on that. We have a lot of festive activities scheduled for Independence Day on Nantucket, Friday, July 4th. Full schedule is on the town website. Round 2 of our committee appointment process is proceeding. The applications for round 2 are due on Thursday, July 3rd, and that is for the Cannabis Advisory Committee, the Contract Review Committee, the Cultural Council, the Roads and Right-of-Way Committee, the Town of Nantucket Scholarship Committee, the Tree Advisory Committee, and the Zoning Board of Appeals alternate. Appointments will be made on July 23rd for those appointments. The Historical Commission is being re-advertised for all available seats. Information is on the town website. I'm going to go to our Chief Information Technology Officer for item number 7. Mike Alvarez.
Hi, good afternoon. Mike Alvarez, Chief Technology Officer. Just want to update you folks on the new agenda and minutes center on the website. This is a change that started going into effect last Wednesday, and trying to take advantage of both the holiday and a bit of a long weekend there. This is an upgrade to, it's to align with the strategic board's plan and to make it easier for residents to access meetings, notices, agendas, thank you, minutes, and related documents. Folks that were subscribed to notifications for the select board, HDC, and so on, will need to resubscribe for those. Unfortunately, we are unable to simply transfer subscriptions over. That's something that folks will have to resubscribe for. You can easily do so by visiting the website, nantucket-ma.gov. Just scroll right down to the bottom of the page and you'll see the new agenda and minutes module right there at the bottom. And you'll be able to click on the subscribe button in the upper right corner. Once again, current members must resubscribe. It's the only thing we're asking folks to do. And if you're a brand new user, go ahead and create a login if you want, and explore more of the options we've added to our website. If you folks have any questions about that, otherwise, I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mike. There have been some questions and concerns about this, and as with all newly rolled out items, that's probably to be expected. But all answers can pretty well be answered by looking at the website instructions on this agenda. There's no select board meeting on Wednesday, July 2nd. The next meeting after that will be Wednesday, July 9th. Town offices are closed on Friday, July 4th in observance of Independence Day. And that is, we did have something come in a little bit later. The planning board will be holding a hybrid public hearing on Monday, July 14th at 4 in this room. It's a hybrid meeting to solicit feedback for the master plan vision statement. The public comment period will be open through Monday, August 4th at 4. Written comments may be submitted, and those should be addressed to Megan Trudell, the Deputy Director of Planning. And this information will be on the town website and posted on the select board's next agenda. And plus, we'll also be launching an online permit submission protocol for the building division by the end of summer 2025. This has been in the works for some time, and I think probably people in the permit world know about it. But the plan is it'll get going by the end of summer. And that's it for announcements.
Thank you. Are there any opening select board reports or comments, announcements or comments? I just wanted to mention, I announced a couple of weeks ago that Nat Lowell had a very serious illness and was in the hospital for surgery. I want to report that he arrived home yesterday and is well and on his way to full recovery. So welcome home, Nat.
He was not going to miss traffic season. It's his favorite time of year.
And thankfully, we have the best hospitals in the world in Boston. Update on public comment questions from prior select board meetings. I have quite a packet here to read, so bear with me. On 6/11, Mary Bergman asked, why is the Historic District Commission not taking comments anymore? The town response is the HDC chair will address this question at the July 10th meeting. Megan Perry, can we get an update on the Wiggles Way total cost and the audit status that was going to be performed on that project? The town's response is the Affordable Housing Trust contributed $18,924,000 towards housing Nantucket's Wiggles Way development, supporting both construction and land acquisition costs. The full financial breakdown of the project was recently shared by Housing Nantucket and is available in this article from the Nantucket Current. There is a link on the website. The project has received all certificates of occupancy and tenants have begun moving in. An independent audit of the project is planned through the Affordable Housing Trust and will move forward following final completion of the remaining site work, including landscaping and paving. This timing ensures a full and accurate review of all project costs and scope. Number 2, can the select board help speed up the FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act? Town response, public records requests have grown significantly over the past decade. In fact, from 2017 to 2024, public records requests grew sixfold, from 103 per year to 623. The growth in requests continues. Year to date, more than 660 public records requests have been filed online. Moreover, the trend is for records requests to be broadly worded, seeking any and all reports, permits, documents, and communications involving multiple individuals and departments. Some of these broadly worded requests generate thousands of emails, each needing to be reviewed individually. Many requests require extensive coordination, interdepartmental and/or legal review, and redaction. When a records request involves emails, the records access officer confirms the lists of names with the requester. This is necessary because it is not technically possible for the Information Technology Department to search for group accounts labeled with collective names such as Select Board. The records access officer also confirms or amends key search parameters with the request, including keywords, addresses, specific phrases, and timeframes. Once the search parameters are finalized, the records access officer submits the request to IT for email retrieval. IT then reports the number of emails captured and advises whether review charges may apply as a result of the size and scope of the request. The requester is notified and given the opportunity to modify the scope or approve any. Is that supposed to be changes?
No, charges.
Charges, oh, okay. After emails are retrieved, the records access officer must sort them into confidential, responsive, and non-responsive categories. Send responsive emails to a department head or staff member with subject matter knowledge for content review. Forward confidential materials to town council for legal review. Share a view-only link of the final responsive documents with the requester. These required process steps are time-consuming and create resource challenges within town government. The most effective way to speed up the public records process is for requesters to limit the scope and timeframe of their request and to include keywords and specific names, not a committee name. An example of a broadly worded request that is time-consuming, inefficient, and slows down the process from all requesters can be seen below. May I please have a copy of all correspondence between all representatives of the town of Nantucket and all representatives of Surfside Crossing from September 15th, 2024 until fulfillment of this request? That was a direct quote. When the requester was asked to clarify which individuals were included in the request, the following response was received. Could I please include all select board members, all Affordable Housing Trust members, all NP and EDC members, the planning director, assistant director, the town manager, assistant managers, the finance director, and Billy Cassidy? As a result, the broad request required the review of emails from 28 individuals, each subject to the multi-step process outlined above. A review of 2,841 emails is required, and the involvement of at least 4 departments, consuming many hours of town employee time for this single request. Includes records requests of town administration, Nantucket Public Schools, Nantucket Fire Department, and Nantucket Police Department. Next, Barbara Burgo, what timeframe is followed for changes to the agenda? What are the rules for changing an agenda after it is posted? The town's response. Pursuant to the Massachusetts Open Meeting Law, which a public body should make reasonable efforts to follow time estimates listed on an agenda to benefit transparency and public expectations. Failure to do so is not a violation of the law. Open Meeting Law, Chapter 261 of the Acts of 2024 does not prohibit a public body from removing, postponing, or declining to discuss a topic listed on the meeting notice or taking topics in a different order than listed on the notice. 6/4/2025. Clifford Williams regarding the African Meeting House request for proposals, known as RFP. Mr. Williams stated he has not received a copy of the draft RFP and that final edits were not included in the RFP. He said he asked for an emergency meeting of the African Meeting House Investigation Procurement Work Group, but never received a response. Town response. Draft RFP distribution and review. The draft RFP was distributed in hard copy at work group meetings and shared electronically with all work group members. Specifically, on May 9th, 2025, Records Access Officer Maureen Coleman emailed to the work group a copy of the draft RFP and draft minutes from the April 28th meeting in preparation for the May 12th meeting. Mr. Williams submitted edits to the draft RFP via email. The draft RFP was posted online May 12th, 2025. At the May 12th, 2025 in-person meeting, the work group discussed and agreed on revisions to the draft RFP. Municipal Finance Director Brian Turbert incorporated these changes into the RFP. The group then voted to delegate final review and approval to Select Board Member and Work Group Chair Malcolm McNabb to meet the planned issuance date of May 21, 2025. The work group did not request to see a final version before issuance. Meeting format and materials. Meetings were held in person and via Zoom, and materials, agendas, draft scope of services, and draft RFP were distributed in hard copies to members and attendees. On April 17th, 2025, printed materials were distributed to attendees at the posted meeting held in meeting trailer room A. For subsequent meetings, meeting materials were placed at each work group member's seat before the start of the meeting. Emergency meeting request. Mr. Williams sent an email to the work group requesting an emergency meeting. Dr. McNabb, who has delegated final RFP approval by the work group, did not act to schedule such a meeting and as it did not meet the criteria under the open meeting law for an emergency. Meeting dates, April 17th, April 23rd, April 28th, May 5th, canceled due to annual town meeting, and May 12th. Those 4 meetings that were held were in person and on Zoom. Barbara Burgo, regarding the African Meeting House, what newspapers were the request for proposal put into and what was the cost, and how many days did the posting run? Town response, Central Register, 1-day print publication, no cost. Goods and services, 1-day print publication, no cost. Combis, posted in accordance with procurement requirements, posting remains online for 30 days, no cost. The Enquirer and Mirror, 1-day print publication, cost $100.98. Boston Globe, 1-day print ad plus 30-day online posting, cost $396. Rebic Duhame, when will the GovOS short-term rentals permit portal be updated so operators can apply for 2026 permits? Town response, September 1, 2025. Number 2, some STR operators may still need to apply for 2025 permits. Will the portal allow the applicant to select whether they're applying for 25 or 26? Town response, an STR operator can only apply for a 25 permit at this time. How will the town publicize the start date and deadline for 26 STR permit applications? Town response, each STR operators will receive an email at the address provided during the application process to indicate that they are now able to register for 2026. The email will go out on September 1, 2025. A reminder email will be sent approximately 3 weeks after the deadline until the deadline of 11/1/2025. Number 4, with regard to enforcement of Chapter 123 short-term rentals, Section 3H of the Town Code, the town previously responded to my inquiry of April 9th, 2025, to indicate that a form will be inserted in the GovOS system for the permit application to attest the short-term rental was operated in accordance with all bylaws and regulations of the town during the previous year. Given citizens' ongoing concern about what types of entities are seeking to benefit from operating short-term rentals, perhaps this form could specifically request additional information along the following lines. A, is the property owned by a corporation, partnership, real estate investment trust, or any similar entity which pools funds from investors and is engaged primarily in investment activity? Yes or no? B, if the property is owned by an LLC, trust, or S corporation, is every shareholder, partner, or member of the legal entity a natural person? Yes or no? If yes, please list all the shareholders, partners, or members of the legal entity. Town response, thank you for your recommendation. The current regulations refer only to SDR operators being required to attest to operating in accordance with all bylaws and regulations in the previous year. Those are all of the responses. They are also posted online for people to read at their leisure. Next up, we have public comment for items that are not otherwise on our agenda for discussion. And according to our guidelines, we will just limit topics to 3 minutes. Amy Eldridge?
Hi, Amy Eldridge. I have 2 quick questions. When will the landfill start taking batteries again? I know they had a fire and that's been shut down, but I'm really worried about the batteries being thrown into the garbage and becoming a problem to the environment. So I was curious if we could get an update as to when you'd be able to dispose of batteries properly at the landfill. This is a landfill topic. So I saw on the Current that the digester has been broken since February, and we're just finding out about it like now. I think it's really important that we understand what's happening at the landfill. You guys just signed a giant contract and no mention in the talking of that contract here that there was an issue with the digester. I mean, this week we've had issues with the water and the landfill. Those are 2 huge sanitation issues for this community going into our summer season. And I find it very concerning that we're kind of left in the dark about the digester being broken since February. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Campbell Sutton online.
Good evening. I'm hoping everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make a quick comment on the response, the town's response to the Freedom of Information Act. I really appreciated the detail that was provided. And I appreciated the example of the a broad request. But what I felt was sort of missing is what to juxtapose it to. Like, so what would be a more appropriate, efficient, and effective request? So I was wondering if there would be a way that they could, provide that example for the community, as I'm sure Megan isn't the only one asking for these requests. And I think that might be very helpful. Thank you, and stay cool, everyone.
Thank you. We'll get that back to you.
Hi, everyone. Dylan Metchampel, the Town Deputy Housing Director. I just want to share an update on the seasonal communities designation that the town voted to accept at this past town meeting. For quick background, the seasonal communities designation, which was created through the Affordable Homes Act, empowers the town with certain tools, including acquiring year-round housing occupancy restrictions, acquiring and developing housing with preference for seasonal public employees, and increasing property tax exemptions for homes that are the owner's primary residence. We're excited about the potential for the seasonal communities designation to improve housing on Nantucket. With that in mind, we wanted to let everyone know about the upcoming seasonal communities listening and engagement sessions being organized by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. In their own words, during the session, they will provide a brief overview of the designation and the work they are doing alongside the Seasonal Communities Advisory Council to develop regulations structuring the tools it makes available to communities before opening the meeting up for public feedback. Regulations are still in development, and as a result, these sessions will not provide definitive answers on questions about final regulations, but rather it will give the residents the chance to shape how regulations answer these questions. So all of the sessions will be held via Zoom, and folks do need to register in advance. There will be 3 opportunities to attend a session. The first is tomorrow, Thursday, June 26th at 6 p.m. Then there's one Wednesday, July 9th at 6 p.m. and a third Thursday, July 17th at 11 a.m. And just to be clear, they're all the same, so you don't have to, you're not going to miss anything. You should only attend one. For more information, please feel free to reach out to me or the housing office. Our email is housing@nantucket-ma.gov, and the rest of our contact information is also available online. And we're in the process of getting the information, including the sign up directly on our website. So check back there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment this evening? Okay, seeing none. There's no new business that I'm aware of. Approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts.
So moved?
Is there a second?
Yes.
I have a question about a contract.
Sure, go ahead.
On the first page, the last one, cultural and tourism, on-sale systems, a visual self-guided tour of Nantucket sites and history. I was just wondering if we have our own historic association here. Have they been consulted? Did they have an opportunity to perhaps put something together? Just for the record, my wife is an employee of NHA.
I'm not sure. I'll have to find out.
I'm sorry?
I'm not sure. I will
Okay.
have to find out.
I just think we have a great source. And they, in the past, when the students were here several years ago, they did develop something. It's probably a little outdated and might need to be updated, but
I think it may be for sites that are not part of the NHA, that are considered cultural.
yeah, but they part of their other tour, they do have a walking tour guide. It's a pamphlet that does have sites other than NHA, since it has the whole island. I would just think they needed to be consulted.
Did you want to postpone voting on this one?
I would postpone that one till I hear next meeting about that.
Is that okay to
that okay?
Postpone that for 2 weeks.
I don't see why not.
Because the rest are fine. Everything else is fine.
Okay, Matt, are you
I'll-
willing
I'll
to
accept
amend your
that.
motion?
Yeah, I'll
Okay,
accept
and
that.
will you second it, Malcolm?
Yes.
Okay, so on all of the other items, all those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Okay, citizen departmental committee requests and reports, National Grid, presentation of Nantucket non-wires alternative NWA initiative. Hi, Lauren.
I'm going to introduce tonight's speaker. Good to be with you this evening, Lauren Sinatra, Energy Coordinator. With today shaping up to be the hottest day of the year, it's a timely reminder of the growing strain summer demand places on Nantucket's electric grid. To help address this, I'm pleased to announce that National Grid will be offering a new suite of programs and enhanced incentives exclusively for island customers starting this summer. I'd like to introduce Stephen Hopengarten from National Grid's Energy Transition Solutions customer team, who is here to share more about how local residents and businesses can earn enhanced rewards for reducing electricity use on peak demand days, helping to improve grid reliability. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you, Lauren. As Lauren said, I'm Stephen Hopengarten. I work in the customer group inside National Grid. We are the electric provider for the island of Nantucket, as well as a number of other communities across Massachusetts, the UK, and New York. So I'm here to talk about non-wires alternatives and customer offerings to help customers, have customers help National Grid maintain a safe and reliable network, especially during peak days like today. So if you could please move on to the next slide. Thank you. So this is a lot of words, and if anyone from the board has a question and like to interrupt me, please do. I'd like to do this more as a conversation with the community. So a non-wires alternative is effectively a non-traditional solution to make sure that the grid is reliable by not building or deferring or maybe changing the scope of capital infrastructure. So, for example, in a historical lens, if the company noticed there was an increase in load, you might just build another substation or build more wires or do some traditional reinforcement. A non-wires alternative is looking at the demand side and thinking about ways we can reduce the load or add more local generation. So that might be managing your use during peak times. It might be having a battery in your home that moves your home off the network and onto the battery. It might be having energy exported from a battery back to the grid, or other kinds of microgridding options and different ways to configure the network. So this is a really technical slide, but the short answer is what we're trying to do is optimize the infrastructure we have so that we can try and mitigate future capital investments or potentially defer or delay them. And if we implement these types of demand side programs successfully, they can really help with those peak days like we saw today, where today was a loading of like 45 megawatts drawing from the 2 undersea cables that come from Cape Cod. Please go on to the next slide. So why are these important to Nantucket? So as I said, demand is growing significantly on the island. This is true across Massachusetts, but it's really grown heavily. So if you look in the chart on the right, you can see in 2004, peak megawatt usage of the island on a peak day was about 40 megawatts. Last year, it was closer to 55. This year, it's predicted to be a little bit higher. I think the highest forecast is like 60. And you can see that through 2034, it goes up to 80 megawatts. And this is simply a function of an evolving world, an evolving society, an evolving community. We've got more economic development, that's more electrified homes, more businesses, more adoption of electric vehicles, and more electrification of devices in people's homes, things like heat pumps. So as a utility, trying to be mindful of what we put on the customer bill, we want to think about ways that we can avoid just doing traditional capital projects and think about ways we can innovate and manage this load growth by potentially reducing the demand or optimizing the network itself on the island to make sure that we're being able to provide a safe and reliable network, because we know that during certain days we've got a risk of an outage, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to maintain network reliability for the customers in the community. Next slide, please. So to combat this, as a function of something that we got approved through the electric sector modernization plan, National Grid is rolling out a enhanced suite of offerings that exist on top of our existing Connected Solutions program. So this is a very technical slide, and I'm not going to read it verbatim. But we have an existing, very well-established Connected Solutions program for our residential, commercial customers across the state of Massachusetts that is responding to system-wide peaks. So that's when it's really, really hot across New England. We are now standing up enhanced offerings to respond for customers to respond specifically to peak loading on the island of Nantucket. So if you were in an existing program, you're going to get an increased incentive on what you already get. So for every thermostat, let's say, that you had that was enrolled, that automatically turned up the temperature on a peak day, you're automatically going to get an increased incentive at the end of the year for doing nothing by simply just being a customer. And if you're a new customer and you hadn't bought a thermostat historically, normally you get a $50 enrollment bonus. Now you're going to get $100 plus an additional $5 on a gift card at the end of the year. And this goes forth for all of our customers, and I've got more specific examples later. But what we've done is added increased incentives specifically for customers on Nantucket so that we can try and drive more community engagement and reduce peak demand during these peak conditions. And then, of course, we've also done some small upgrades to our smart charger off-peak charging programs as well for electric vehicles. And then the next slide, please. So what does this mean, right? Like what did all that jargon I just went through actually mean? So what it means is we are leveraging new large language learning models and increased information to understand when peaks are going to happen on Nantucket. Not just across ISO New England, but specifically when there's going to be a peak day on Nantucket, which operates a little differently than mainland Massachusetts. When we feel like there is going to be a peak, we are going to activate customers enrolled in these new programs and have them reduce their demand. Most of the time for residents or small businesses, this is going to be passive. It's going to be done by a smart device in your home. You do nothing, you get more money. It's great. For certain business, like large businesses or large facilities like the high school or the hockey rink, they're going to have to do some active management of their demand during these windows, but they're going to be notified in advance and they can plan accordingly. And to do that, they're going to get compensated for this. The reason that we want to do these enhanced incentives is that Nantucket peaks are different. They happen at different time windows than mainland Massachusetts, and they often happen on the weekends. Mainland Massachusetts typically peaks during weekdays. Nantucket typically peaks closer to the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just the nature of this community. So it's slightly more inconvenient and slightly different than what we normally see in Massachusetts, we're trying to say, like, hey, if we throw more incentives at the customers and try and engage them in a more targeted fashion, can we get customers on Nantucket to support those needs? All of the customers currently enrolled in our programs are going to be automatically enrolled at the higher incentive rates effective the 1st of July. So if you're already enrolled as a small, medium business or a homeowner, you're good. You don't do anything, and you automatically get an increased incentive at the end of the year, or at the end of the busy season. And then any new customers, as I mentioned earlier, are going to get a higher enrollment bonus. So what we're doing is really hoping that we can use these enhanced rewards to get customers to continue to reduce their demand during these peak conditions so we can provide a strong, reliable grid. Next slide, please. So in addition to this, National Grid is also standing up a open market, basically an RFP, for any solar and storage developers that are interested in building assets on the island. So large front-of-the-meter assets like maybe wind, solar, batteries, just giving a signal out that, hey, if you have something that you can aggregate or install this summer and potentially in future years, you're able to bid in at your price, and National Grid will compensate you at that price, maybe with a little negotiation, to try and drive more economic development of distributed energy resources on the island. We think that this is a great solution, not necessarily at the kind of residential level or small commercial level, but more to attract kind of DER developers that work across New England, it's like, oh, maybe there's an opportunity here in Nantucket. And, they bear the risk of all the development and permitting and a lot of other stuff. But what we're trying to do is attract everyone that can provide either, clean generation or export megawatts, or on the other side, the customer side, reduce their demand. Can you go to the next slide, please? So what's next? First, for large customers, we're doing outreach. So dedicated account managers that already work with large users of electricity on the island are working directly with those customers and providing them a flyer with like a kind of summary of what their earnings could be. And interested large C&I customers can work with a containment service provider or get in touch with National Grid through the National Grid website for Nantucket, so that they can start to activate these things and get significant tens of thousands of dollars in savings at the end of the season for simply using a little less electricity. Straight savings on your bottom line or cash in pocket. And then if you go to the next slide, please. For residential and small business customers, we're starting a targeted outreach campaign or email to get people aware of this new program, direct mailers, as well as a new landing page underneath the Connected Solutions Plus banner, specifically for Nantucket, which has all the key details that I've gone through before, broken out by kind of what type of customer you are, as well as ways to register and take advantage of these enhanced incentives. All of this will link you back to like our main website and get you kind of where you need to be. So we're trying to make it as easy as an experience as possible without having to navigate all the different nuances of the nationalgrid.com page. We're starting with just a landing page specifically for Nantucket so that it's easy for residents, businesses to find out how they can take advantage of these programs and enhanced incentives. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what are we doing beyond this year? So National Grid is currently starting with a very small scope of just the rest of this summer. So from July 1st through the end of October is when the first round of enhanced incentives are going to be available. And then we're starting to build out future plans for the next 5 years to get more programs rolled out on the island. So my team is working very closely with the Energy Office and Lawrence Sinatra on the Community First partnership, which is providing more awareness of all the offerings available to customers, renters, landlords, and small businesses. I'm going to try and do that this fall. So not only existing mass save programs, which are on energy efficiency, but also these targeted Nantucket programs. We're also looking at the Main Streets Initiative, which is specifically to upgrade small businesses with energy efficiency upgrades. And again, these increased Nantucket specific incentives. So doing things like heat pumps, smart thermostats, batteries in your business, things like that. We're also working with the Town Energy Office to kind of collaborate on the Beat the Peak campaign. How can we notify the community? So even people who aren't involved in any of these targeted programs, just ways we can say awareness, like, hey, there's a peak coming up. Maybe you want to consider, not using large loads like your washing machine or your dishwasher during these conditions to help kind of make the system more reliable, reduce the overall load. So we're starting those conversations now and thinking about, what are the prudent ways that we want to notify the community and how to do that. So that's kind of conversations that are ongoing. As I mentioned earlier, providing long-term signals through our market platform, an RFP to storage and solar developers to drive more of those businesses to look at Nantucket as an option for development and provide more on-island energy resources. And then beyond that, starting to leverage our smart meters to understand customer behavior, maybe give them more information around when they're driving up their own energy costs so that they can understand, oh, when I do this, there's a direct impact on my bill, and now they can start changing their behavior, something we call the behavioral demand response, so they can drive their bills down on their own, right? They don't need an enhanced incentive. They're just going to be given information for free through an application called Sense and a smart meter installed in their home. And we're going to try and understand in forthcoming years, how can we leverage that data to maybe get more devices involved in these types of offerings, things like, I was talking to someone from the community earlier this week about maybe we can leverage pool pumps, and try and figure out ways to leverage data to do that, or other large appliances, give customers more information, or potentially start building out new offerings on the island. So we're really, really hoping that all of these different things, this kind of full court press of providing an enhanced incentive to your large C&I commercial and industrial customers, our small, medium businesses, and our residents and landlords, and homeowners in general, to try and attract as many different people as we can to these programs to reduce that load. Then at the end of the season, National Grid is going to take a look back and try and see what worked and what didn't. What worked from a program side, what worked from a pricing signal, what worked from a community engagement, and from the RFP for DER developers. And we want to take this and say, like, okay, this worked on Nantucket, this is what didn't work. How can we expand upon this, not only for Nantucket, but across Massachusetts and our other service territory in New York? We're hoping that this is going to be a really good test case for non-wireless alternatives and really put Nantucket on the map as like an energy leader, a way that they can be reliable, safe, and give customers a lot of incentives back. And the downside of this is nothing. The only thing it does is provide benefit. For the customer, you get savings on your bill. For the utility, we can help manage our current assets. And the absolute worst case is someone either unenrolls from the program or they complain that their thermostat is a little too warm, and they can actually just walk over and adjust it. There's zero downside. Maybe a little customer confusion, to be honest, but that's, again, very, very manageable. So we're really hoping that we can work very closely with the community, with the energy office, particularly with the select board in a more detailed way around how we can improve on what we've done in the summer of 2025 and expand upon it in 25, 26, 27, 28, which is all funded through something called the Electric Sector Modernization Plan and the Grid Services Compensation Fund, which are basically funds that we can use to test these types of novel programs for flexible capacity and start to apply those learnings across all of our Massachusetts service territory, as well as teach other electric distribution companies in Massachusetts and around the world. And I think I'm on my last slide. If you don't mind advancing. Thank you. So lastly, these are simple incentives, really breaking it down, bringing it home. So if you are a large customer, you could earn up to $4,000 for performance in our targeted dispatch program, $15,000 in our daily dispatch program. A small, medium business with 2 thermostats could get up to about $500 if they've never been enrolled before, $400 if they are. A resident can earn $75 for a home with 3 thermostats already, and an additional $300 on top of that if they're new customers that haven't been enrolled, so that's $375. And then for a resident that wants to put a battery in their home, kind of depends on the performance and the size of your battery, but an average resident could take home $2,000 in a cash incentive per year. And then electric vehicle operators can get $100 off their bill at the end of the season, as well as for participating in a bonus at the end of the year for $100, and if they're a new customer joining the program, an additional $50. So these are all things that can really put money back in the pockets of business owners and residents. We want to make life easier and provide a safe and reliable and affordable network.
I have a couple questions. If
Yeah.
that's all right.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, what is daily and targeted dispatch?
Yeah, so those are 2 different programs. So daily dispatch is we activate large customers more often, daily. We have the rights to activate you more often in that program. And target is we're a little bit more judicious in when you're dispatched. So there's certain days where the load is a little higher than others. And on the targeted days, we kind of activate everybody. And on other days when we're just trying to maintain the undersea cables underneath thermal condition or the feeders on the island, we probably leverage just the daily dispatch customers.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, and I participated in the connected solutions, and he's absolutely correct. You can turn it, you can turn your thermostat down or up, if you have to. It'll tell you it's overridden, but if you want to change it, you can change it.
Yep.
So, and you can only do that a couple times a year, but you can do it. You have control. The other question was, is there going to be anything for kilowatts for people doing, I don't know, 10, 15 kilowatts, for arrays on roofs, large roofs, or businesses or homes?
So for solar arrays, because they're not flexible capacity, can't really do anything right now, because what the reality of it is that solar provides generation in the middle of the day between like 10 and 2. That's kind of the nature of the beast. It's when the sun is the highest in the sky. And the loading on Nantucket is actually highest more in the evening. So the reality is because solar doesn't, it's generation that doesn't necessarily match when the demand is happening, we can't do anything about that. However, if someone does have solar on their roof and they pair it with storage, they can charge the battery for free from that solar and then discharge the battery during the system peak or move their home onto the battery and help with this program.
Right, and I sort of, for the public, I kind of look at this, you know, they say, why would we do it? What are you really doing? There's a lot of words and some of it's pretty technical. It's, you know, the extra cables are really expensive. And what they're trying to do is find ways to entice us to, you know, to save money or to use it more, save energy or use it more efficiently so that they can benefit and we as a community can benefit by not having to put those very expensive cables in. So maybe we put 1 or 2 in instead of 4, or, you know, and find other ways to do that. So that's kind of the short version, I think, of what was said. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Like, if we can start to understand the impact of customers changing the way they use energy, it can change how we look at the undersea cables, right? Do we want to extend their life and defer that cost? When we look at new options, if we understand the impact of customers responding, do we resize any new investments so that we can say, well, you know, that peak's not going to be realized. We're not going to hit that 80 megawatt number because so many customers have been involved, or we've installed so much generation on island, or, you know, other distribution energy resources on island. Maybe we don't have to do as much. And it's, you know, things that we're exploring, right? And part of this is learnings, right? What are we going to learn not only this year, but over the next 5 years to understand how is this going to impact what investments the company makes over the long term? And we do want to be very mindful of that ratepayer impact. So we're trying to do this in a prudent way to say, like, what is a way we can save ratepayers money and still provide the same level of reliability that we are mandated to?
Yeah, one other question. If someone was trying to make a decision whether to put a battery in or not and pair it with a, you know, solar, et cetera, how long, and you're saying it's up to $2,000 a year, depending how large a battery, I mean, how large a storage they put in? What's the guarantee? How many years will that be in place? If they were someone looking at a spreadsheet trying to decide what to do?
The guarantee of the incentive?
Yeah,
So say with pretty high level of confidence, maybe about 5 years of that incentive.
okay.
That's already funded and been approved by the Department of Public Utilities.
All right, great. And then you still get the other incentives for putting all the other things.
And this all sits on top of all of the other incentives that you get through mass save programs, through federal incentives, through state incentives, all of that. This all sits on top of that, and we're trying to design it to work in tandem.
Great, thank you.
Do you have any data on residential battery adoption for Nantucket? Is that something National Grid compiles?
Yes, but I don't have it at hand.
Okay.
So you could reach out to me or the email at the end of the address, and I can get you an answer and provide that back to Select Board, but I don't have that answer at the touch of my finger.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So yeah, just to wrap it up, I will be holding office hours at the Chamber of Commerce on the second floor at 0 Main Street. If any members of the community, commercial, you know, small, medium business, residents would like to ask questions, and I'll probably be working with Lauren, the Energy Office, about developing further community engagement, not only for this summer, but for kind of subsequent years and upgrades they could do during, you know, in their home or business during the off season. We're also, you know, starting that outreach campaign with the mailers and the flyers and the website and all that good stuff is going out in the next week or two. And if you have, you know, questions about these programs immediately, we've updated the webpage. I believe it's going to be live. I think it was put live today with all the information around these programs. And also, if you have general questions about these programs and what we're trying to do, there's a mailing address that goes to a community inbox for the team I work with. To make sure we get back to any members of the community with questions they may have.
And will your office hours be posted on that site?
I don't know. No, I don't think so, unfortunately.
So where can people find what those will be?
In the packet and the recording from today, unfortunately.
Okay.
This was a little bit, I'm going to be completely transparent. It was a little bit short.
Oh, I'm
notice for us
sorry.
to do it.
It's right in front of me.
That's fine. But we're going to do we're going to work with the Energy Office to make sure that we've got, you know, for any subsequent community events that we hold, we're going to do more detailed and thorough, awareness campaign. This was a little bit haphazard. We did want to get this program out in front before, the 1st of July when it was planned to launch and, make the community aware of it. So trying to kind of get ahead of the summer peak season.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much. So tomorrow, 11 to 2. Next up, we have a joint meeting with the Board of Health to discuss licensing and enforcement of short-term rentals, status of events and gatherings, and moratorium on septic variances. Malcolm, did you want to open? a Board of Health
Yes,
meeting?
let me see, we have Mr. Cooper, Ms. Smith, anyone else? That's it, just 3? All right. So we do have a quorum, so this meeting, a joint meeting with the Board of Health on June 25th is now open with 3 members present.
Okay, did you want to lead us through?
Well, we can start, with how we're doing with the gathering regulations, because that kind of feeds into the role of the health department in all of this, which I've been vocal in the past. I do have my questions about it. So if we go back to actually last summer, there was a South Shore Road incident, which created a lot of difficulties for the neighbors. Particularly, I did get some calls of other activity that occurred. Of course, they weren't necessarily documented, so we don't have a lot of quantitative definition of the problem. But around September, we did talk about this briefly at the Select Board, and I had the sense you sort of encouraged the Board of Health to continue, because just to remind everyone that the short-term rental regulations can be amended by the Board of Health. However, those amendments must be approved by the Select Board. So it's not a totally independent function of the Board of Health. So you'll notice in your packet, we do have some draft gathering regulations that were put together with the help of our attorney. We did have public hearings over about 3 or 4 meetings. We did close that public hearing because we really had very little public comment. We did have 2 caterers that had objections, but that was about it. But the board has not voted on those, so I'm not speaking with an official board position. If we voted on it, I could say the board agreed this and that. But we do have 2 board members here who may want to speak about this. We did have a meeting with the Culture and Tourism.
Hold on, Malcolm. Eric?
I just wanted to know, there are no gathering regulations in the packet? We weren't given anything, so we just have short-term rentals.
There are draft regulations in the packet.
There's short-term rental, like the chapter 338, that's
Yeah,
it.
and there's, if you go down to, in blue, part of it, and let me find.
Oh, yeah, sorry, 338.51?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's based on gathering. And those regulations were drafted based on another community and also with our attorney and with comments from the board. Again, we worked on it over 3 or 4 meetings. The process, though, kind of reminded me of the multiple warrants that we debated at town meeting on short-term rental. There always seemed to be some twist or possible exception. And certainly it's easy to write a regulation, but it always seemed to be a circumstance that could not be covered without getting the regulations much too complicated. So I have some questions and some concerns and something that we can talk about as a whole. Of course, the first question is, do we need these? Is there a problem significant enough that we need to have gathering regulations for short-term rentals? And you could also ask, well, if you have these for short-term rentals, what about non-short-term establishments? What's the difference? And then how do we define what event falls under the regulation? There are some in those draft regulations that deal with the number of approved occupancies plus some more, but is that enough? And does the health department have the capacity to oversee and enforce additional regulations? And that would be, if you do have such a regulation, you would have to have an application, someone would have to review it, and then someone at some point would have to enforce it. And for example, that would even go to counting people at gatherings. Does the health department want to go out and check the parking situation? Because certainly parking would be included. And in those regulations, we do have some comments about parking. Of course, it is possible, and we actually did this with the some of the fertilizer regulations, we could actually enact some regulations and designate someone else to actually enforce it, like culture and tourism, for example, because they now are taking regulations for more larger gatherings, as you know. Of course, that would require administration and that department to agree to do it, and would have to have the board agree to it as well. And of course, always as this should be, this in the health department at all. That goes back to the first question, is this a health issue? And one of my colleagues always mentions that most anything that happens on this island, we can make a health regulation about. But this may be getting a little too far. And what about the credibility? If we introduce more regulations that are not adequately enforced, are we losing credibility again? I mean, the last couple of weeks, I've gotten lots of phone calls and emails about perceived short-term events that were not regulated correctly. And of course, do we need this? I mentioned it before. Do we have existing regulations already? We have parking regulations and we have noise regulations. And the complaints last summer and the complaints I received deal mostly with parking and noise and disruption. And we do have a noise regulation and we do have parking regulations. So that's my comments. I don't know if my two board members would like to add anything. Again, I'm not speaking for the board because we haven't voted on these as yet. Ms. Smith or Mr. Cooper?
Oh, Jim, you've got to come to the, Jim, I'm sorry, you're going to have to come to a mic. Jim? Okay. Can we bring it to him?
Can we bring the mic to him?
Just because people are listening, and if you're not using a mic, they can't hear what's happening.
Okay, is this better? All right. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Some of the things that I think of that don't really work is if someone's parked in someone's driveway, or there's too many people, or there's something, someone's parked up in someone's, on the lawn or the grass or something like that, I think who's ever in charge of the house should call the fire department or should call the police department or someone else. I don't think a board of 5 people can handle that. And if we have other people that are gonna work with us, I mean, people are gonna be on duty constantly. And I think that, I don't think it's really in the purview of the Board of Health. The Board of Health is there for the health and welfare of the people in Nantucket. Who cares where they park? We don't. It's got nothing to do with us. There's so many things in that, and rules and regulations for that that have absolutely nothing to do with the Board of Health.
Thank you, Jim. Ms. Smith, Ann, do you have any comments, or? And we'll see what the select board, the wisdom of the select board.
you know, a lot of things come in front of us in terms of the Board of Health that we have to say, is this really a health matter? Does this affect the health and safety and well-being of the citizens of Nantucket? And I have to say, I sort of agree with Jim, but I will say that there are situations where an overcrowded property where could definitely affect emergency services. And I think in that regard, we could say that it is part of the health department to regulate in some way. So I don't know whether there could possibly be a compromise here, but I don't know that we should walk away from it completely. And I think that, I'm not sure exactly how we would continue this discussion, but I think there may be some need for that.
Thank you.
I guess we'll take public comments. I have one hand up online. Campbell Sutton.
Good evening again, Campbell Sutton here. I just have a question because I know we have parking regulations. However, we also have private roads and public roads. And in my experience, the police department is only either allowed to or only enforces parking situations on public roads. And so I'm just sort of wondering, do we need to expand their purview to private roads? Because I'm sure some of these venues may be happening on private roads, and the police officer is just going to look at you and go, well, there's really nothing I can do about it. You can ask the homeowner or something like that. So that I guess is where I feel like having something through the health regulation would allow them to maybe address something on private roads, or maybe there's a way we can propose an amendment or something to include private roadways in the police's jurisdiction. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann DeWez.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much. I would like to make a short and I think relatively easy to implement suggestion, and that is to post the number of STR registrations on the STR site on a regular basis, perhaps weekly would be a good regular basis. Because I know this is a question that comes up a lot. Gee, how many registered STRs are there? And it seems to me it's not a good use of our wonderful administrators' time to keep having to answer that question. And it's something that should be public information in any event. So that I would like to propose. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're going to address that.
Yes.
Rocky Mermontes, Public Health Director. 1295 is the number currently. And just to specifically speak to the draft of the regulations, with a small department such as ours, I do not believe currently that the regulations as they're written are enforceable. The first thing that would need to occur if there was an event happening someplace on the island is you'd have to determine whether or not this was a short-term rental at all, because these regulations only apply to short-term rentals. And so that means somebody would need to be available to be able to answer that question as to whether or not it's a short-term rental. And with staff as small as ours, we are not on call 24 hours a day and cannot respond. The other thing is this creates an entirely new permitting process. And regardless of where that is housed, each permit would be different or potentially different depending on what the board decided to approve. So how many houses, or how many cars, the number of people is pretty set already. But whether or not they needed a parking enforcement plan, whether it existed, all these moving parts would need to be determined on the fly, usually later in the evening when there's not people available to do it. And so I do not believe currently that at least from the health department's perspective, that we would be able to provide appropriate enforcement for the regulations as written.
Thank you.
Comments from the select board? Because whatever, if the Board of Health does approve this, it would have to come back to you at some point. And I don't have the sense that the Board of Health is perhaps a little split on this at the present time. And myself personally, I've been for and against it, depends on the day.
I mean, I could see how it might be a Board of Health concern if the septic system is getting overtaxed by having a private event with hundreds of people. I don't think it actually has, although these events may take place at something that is also used as an STR, these events often take place at completely private homes. I mean, there's one being advertised today as a fundraiser that's definitely not a short-term rental. We also have one on our agenda that's on Conservation Foundation private property for a noise bylaw waiver. So how do we get to the real root of the concern? And who does it apply to? There are, if you look up, there are events throughout the entire season that are for many, many really important nonprofits on the island that are on private property. Does it relate to making sure that portable bathrooms are brought in? Should they have to have a transportation plan so that there aren't cars parked where they're not supposed to be? So I can see a way to possibly regulate, but it's got to be an even playing field, and it's got to apply to all properties and all people having a private event. And is the Board of Health the right way to regulate it? Should it be through licensing? Should it be through planning? I'm not sure. So those are my thoughts. Amy?
Amy Eldridge, I just have a question. Are we considering like single events a short-term rental?
No, I mean, the draft regulations said if it's a short-term rental and if you're the owner and it's your private home and you're short-term renting it, you can have a party there as long as you don't charge money for it. But if you have a short-term rental and it goes over a certain number of people, which we spent hours debating that and came to really no conclusion, then you would have to register as a party, much like the nonprofits go to the tourism, culture and tourism department.
And those are typically handled by the police department and like
Licensing.
Ms. Baxter, yeah.
Yes.
All right, I just wanted to make sure I was a little confused, because like, I know that some are used for both, but were we considering, like the house on South Shore Road that had the big party with Beyonce was there?
Yes.
I mean, are you considering that a short-term rental? They're renting the
Well-
whole place, and there's a mad amount of cars and loud music and all kinds of stuff, so I just want to make sure.
There was a registered short-term rental. I mean, the issue is, it kind of fell to the health department and the Board of Health because we can alter the regulations and amend them with the select board approval. But it doesn't address people that aren't short-term rentals that are having wild parties in the street as well.
And is there gonna be an additional enforcement agency? Because, I mean, I know a lot of these people that are on the health board, and I can't see Mr. Cooper or Miss Smith running around the neighborhood, you know, monitoring and writing tickets, like,
Right.
so how's that gonna work?
It would be the health department, not the board. And as he pointed out, he has in the summer, I mean, he deals with, there's a lot of health issues in the summer with all these people here.
And they don't work evenings. Tom?
Well, that would be a serious increase in a volunteer duty for a board if you had to do that. I mean, the public health director just said that this is not enforceable based on staff time and purview and bandwidth, et cetera. To me, that's as far as it goes. Like we could slice this up and debate every provision of this, but I think before the Board of Health, obviously, were to even consider this, and the select board were to consider amending these regulations at all, I'd want to see some serious public hearing on this, and maybe a long on-ramp. This may seriously affect business on Nantucket. I think that some of the reasons for considering this are in good faith, for sure, but putting something on the books that cannot be enforced by its own department for good faith or for natural organic reasons is not a prudent thing in municipal government.
Jim, did you have a comment?
Well, the only thing, I have one more question is, let's say if you vote to put it to the Board of Health, and let's say, for instance, there's a terrible accident. Too many people in the house catches fire, someone's injured. Is the Board of Health going to be held responsible for that? Is that a yes or no?
I'm not a lawyer, sir.
The town has broad
The town would be.
protection.
Yeah.
The town has broad protection on a lot of that stuff. But I think, I don't think, can I speak? I don't think it belongs in the Board of Health necessarily. I think this is, a lot of things here that were okay, 20 years ago, it was small, it was a one fundraiser at a big house, are not, in my mind, no longer okay for everybody to do them. I think we have to, at some point, come to grips with the fact that we can't, everyone can't do everything they want to do. We can't build this thing out and have huge parties on every single corner every night. It's not, it's not for the good of the island. It's not the right thing. And so I think there's scale. We have home occupancies. You're allowed to do something at your home, and you can run a small business if it's, I'll get the numbers wrong, and and Leslie will kind of smile at me, but it'll 800 square feet and one employee and a couple of cars and like 11 people a day. There's sort of rules around that. So you can have a small carpentry business or a small bread baking business or a small something in your house because it isn't impacting the rest of the neighborhood. But then when it starts to impact the neighborhood, you can't do it there anymore. You have to do it somewhere else. And I think that, so we have that in place. We have that precedent in place. I think what's happening is that people are finding a way. Short-term rentals, it's kind of I don't think it's about short-term rentals. I think this sort of, people have found a way around our existing scale and our existing rules. And I think that a lot of the departments are overworked and understaffed, and it's a hot potato that none of them have the ability to deal with, and just because something's happening, just because you're driving your car 100 miles an hour down the highway and you don't get caught, doesn't mean everyone should be able to drive their car 100 miles an hour down the highway. And so I think that this is, I look at what's happening as people driving their car 100 miles an hour down the highway. And we were unable to catch all of them because we're overstaffed and, and don't have enough people. But I think what's happening, the pressure that we're under, I think is real and having an impact on us. I think part of this is uses. I think, when I was reading the Fay decision with the short-term rentals, a lot of that was talking about uses that are incidental to a permissible activity on a zoned property are permitted as long as the incidental use does not undercut the plain intent of the zoning bylaw. An accessory use or incidental use is permitted as necessarily expected or convenient in conjunction with the principal use of the land. Determining whether an activity is an incidental use is a fact-dependent inquiry, so that I look at this, what we're talking about, and if somebody is having large parties and they're not even there, if you're all having a large party for a wedding for your family, great. That's once a decade, once every 5 years. I think everyone in this room would say that's a great thing. But if your house is having a large wedding every weekend impacting the neighborhood, I don't think there's anyone in here that would say that's a good thing. Yet we're kind of pretending that we can't do anything about it. We pretend that, oh, well, it's not, we don't have the laws written. And I think we do. I just think we have to find a way to get to it. And I'm not saying we're not going to do that tonight, in my opinion. But I think what we're talking about is really important. So, thank you.
I don't remember exactly what it says, but I believe there is a limitation on how many times you can have a tent, which would cover most wedding situations unless your house is really, really large. But
think
I mean,
about,
it's just interesting how it's evolved, because there's another house off of South Shore Road that has literally been called the wedding house for decades. And I've never heard a complaint. But then now this past summer, the complaints were significant. So it's an evolving situation. And I'm just not convinced that it falls under STR regulations or with the Board of Health. But
I'm in agreement, the 100% agreement there, Don. I think what this is, though, is, in my mind, it's things were okay, like the wedding house, which was tucked away, and it wasn't that, large or that ostentatious, and, it didn't need private police and everything else. It was kind of snuck under the radar. It was okay. It's not okay with the level that we're having. There was a house in Tom Nevers that was happening all the time, and if you lived in that neighborhood, it was clearly not okay. It was really detrimental to them and to everyone that was nearby. I think that's what we have to find a way. Is it the number of people? Is it forcing to have it, regardless of the tent, if you're having X amount of people at your house, should there be should we be doing something about it? Should we be at least on notice about it? Like, those are the kind of things I think need to be knocked around.
Campbell Sutton.
Good evening again. Thanks for taking my comment. I just would like to say I agree with both Matt and Tom. I think, well, I'm just going to say I agree with both of them. The thing that's been rolling around in my mind since the court decision on the STR, as narrow as it may be, is if we really need enforcement. I think if you're going to get any kind of regulation going, you've got to have stronger enforcement. If something like Article 66 is going to pass, where you can have STRs wherever, enforcement is key. And if every time we come up against enforcement, whether it's in the health department or wherever, and I know they've conveniently been given the STR thing. I'm not sure it's necessarily an appropriate placement, but that what it is. I think enforcement is absolutely key to this, and we need to have regulations around enforcement. Maybe we need to have an actual enforcement department, or department might not be the right word, that needs to be funded by the applications and by the tickets that may be given out for non-compliance or the like. Because I don't think that the taxpayer is interested in being heavily burdened in order to have another department for enforcement. But I do think that this thing, how it has grown, needs to be able to support itself. And so I would just like to add that into the conversation on enforcement. And instead of always going, because I can't tell you how many issues come up and it's like, well, we just don't enforce it, or we can't enforce it. We need to really, instead of using that as an out, we really need to start looking at, okay, what would enforcement look like? What would it require? That, we're now a town of maybe 18,000 year-round residents. And as we know, it's upwards of 100,000 people in the summer. And communities of that size have regulations and they have enforcement. And I just would encourage that we start to look at that instead of shrugging our shoulders and going, oh, but we can't enforce it. Let's say, well, what could we enforce? How could we enforce it? What would it take to do that? And how much would that cost and where could that money come from? So I appreciate your taking my comment and for taking this issue on. Thank you.
Thank you, Campbell. Caroline?
Caroline Baltzer. Given the last speaker's reference to Article 66 and the repeated reference to it as would have allowed SDRs throughout the island, I would like to read the brief that the town of Nantucket sent on April 7th, 2025, I think, yeah, to Judge Vay, to answer Judge Vay's order. It states that from 1972 through 2015, the Nantucket zoning bylaw contained a definition of use or used, which was to be construed as if followed by the words, or is intended, arranged, designed, built, altered, converted, rented, or leased to be used. It also said in 2015, the definition of used was deleted from the zoning bylaw. It also says this deletion of the definition of used in 2015 was a technical amendment or housekeeping matter on recommendation by the planning department, that one can merely look to the Merriam-Webster's dictionary definition of use if there is any uncertainty as to what this common term meant. And also it says, there was no intention by the planning board in proposing the deletion of use to remove one's ability to rent or lease their home, whether on a short-term or long-term basis, as a primary or accessory use. Finally, it says, the part that I'm reading, no one ever sought a determination whether the bylaw in the 1970s or in the 1990s or in the 2000s authorized the vacation or seasonal rental of property as a principal, as of right use, or as an accessory use. It was simply a generally accepted practice on the island consistent with residential uses. The first time any distinction was made between short-term rentals being a principal or accessory use of a dwelling was in this litigation. So I would like that to be put into the record because it is creating an inaccurate sense of what Article 66 was or any future article, that it would newly establish rentals all across the island. That is how they were from the 1870s on. Thank you.
Thank you. What more guidance are you looking for?
Well,
on
no,
this subject, because you also have.
Well,
this
I have,
variance.
I mean, the nature of the people in the Board of Health is going to change July 1st to a degree. And those people that are still on it can deal with it. But my sense is, I'm not sure the board is totally comfortable with these regulations for a lot of reasons. One, I went through my questions and comments, and certainly the health department is not happy with it. And I don't have a sense that the select board would support them at this time. But I'm very disappointed. We have to do something. My colleague here defined it briefly. I mean, the island is not what it used to be. In the summer, it's become a party place, which is fine, but there has to be some control of that. And as I said, the last week, I've gotten 2 separate complaints about issues around rentals. And I'm disappointed that we're kind of walking away from this. I don't know your thoughts of that. What can we do next? What can the select board do? I mean, we're supposed to manage this island the best we can. And I'm not sure we're totally managing it correctly right now.
Madam Chair, I think there was one case recently that, or one email that the board was copied on of somebody making a complaint, and the town responded and said, basically, here are the correct places to report these issues. And I don't think that this individual had done that from my remembrance of it. And not that this would solve all issues, but maybe it's as simple as knowing there are places to report. If it's noise, I believe it goes to the police department. If it's et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to say anything incorrect, but it's not like there's nothing in place for some of this. Again, I think there's some good faith reasons why this come up. I don't think this is a bad discussion. I think this is something that's on people's minds. It's things that our constituents talk about, Nantucketers and visitors alike. So I think this is a good discussion. I just don't see that this can move forward without a serious plan and a timetable and an on-ramp to and really defining what a gathering is and why. As John Giorgio, our town council, always talks about, for a lot of the bylaws with kind of the rational basis part for the short-term rentals or whatever, I think we really need to flesh out what the rational basis for the gathering part and pulling a permit for that is. I'm not sold based on this rationale on this. I think STR is we've been through this for years. STR is such a wide issue, and it's really easy to demagogue and to cram a lot of stuff into this issue. But I don't think that this is the vehicle that some people would be looking for to stopping more.
I think we're mixing up short-term rentals and large events at properties, whether they're a short-term rental or not. I think that's what the problem. This isn't just a short-term rental situation. This is is this a acceptable, occurrence, and how often is it acceptable? I think that's the discussion we need to be having at some point as a community. It isn't just a short-term rental situation. So,
I mean, this is really a nuisance
yeah.
discussion, and it doesn't necessarily apply to a short-term rental.
But it's
Could very much be a house that is lived in by the same people year-round that can have a nuisance situation. My neighbor might say that my dogs are too loud fairly often. Amy Eldridge?
Hi, Amy Eldridge. I thought years ago we also had passed bylaws about certain numbers of people at the beach and when you could have tents, and if it's over a certain number, why can't we put something like that in effect for some of these things? And again, like, I know I sounded silly earlier, but it was confusing between what's a short-term rental and are we talking about event houses, because it's kind of like the same thing. All of a sudden, one event can be taxing somebody's sewer. So we already have rules in the books for the beaches, and who enforces those? It's the police department. I think we need to make it abundantly clear that if there's an event or an issue at a short-term rental, that we should be calling the appropriate authorities. And I hope that everybody knows that they can call the police station, even though I know that's probably going to be burdensome to their very busy schedule. But we already have rules in the books for beaches. I don't know how we can't do something for events, because it's clearly sounds like it's more events than short-term rentals. But I mean, I understand people are renting houses for a week and having 10 weddings over the 12-week summer season. But maybe if you're going to have a tent and over 25 people at a short-term rental, then you need to apply for additional services. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Peel online, and then I'll go to you.
Hi, thank you, Don. So I kind of understand why it's under the Board of Health, and I'm not advocating for them to keep it under there, but I understand why, because the Board of Health essentially has certain powers that they can enact, regulations like this. My kind of question is, and I think it should maybe go to like culture and tourism or something like that. And I completely agree with what Matt and everybody else has been saying. This should be an island-wide, structured regulation instead of just singly for short-term rentals. But my question would be, so if this was moved to culture and tourism, would this have to go through some sort of general bylaw or put into maybe like some sort of zoning, or can the select board enact this regulation if approved, or does this have to go to town meeting? So I just want to, I just want to see a little more of the process, understand that, because I don't want to see this can get kicked down the road, a lot like what Malcolm was just saying. I think, we are facing quite a few problems, and I just don't want to see this get put on the shelf, and pushed down the road, so.
If we were to put something into the zoning bylaw, that would require a 2/3 town meeting vote, just for clarity on that piece. And might be a worthwhile thing to talk about crafting. But it's complicated. There's so many nuances to every situation.
Again, I think it's a bit more than just a nuisance. I think it is a use situation. I think some of these uses are a stretch of credit, a stretch of the imagination to call them, a home, to call them like a regular home use that everyone does. I mean, I think, again, if I were decided that I'd like to turn my house into a sandwich shop and started making, sandwiches, and people were quiet and drove up quietly, I'd be shut down. They wouldn't allow it. And so that's what's sort of, that is, this is what's happening when someone is bringing a band in and having a band at their house with 300 people, or every other week there's something happening in some of these places. Those, that is not, that's not a regular, oh, we're just having a party for our family. We're having our friends over. And so we as the community have to figure out, where do we draw the line? How do we draw a line that the staff can, that doesn't overburden the staff of the island? I think we are going to kick the can down the road, because I don't see us getting it done for this summer. But I do think, that if people have complaints, they should lodge them this summer, and we should all be aware of it and try not to let it get worse. I always tell my kids, if you ignore something, you don't file your taxes, or you don't make that hard phone call you don't want to make because someone will be mad at you, or whatever it is, you ignore it for a year or two, it comes back worse. And I'm afraid that that's what's going to happen in this situation. But I don't see us having any option to deal with it in the next week. A bomb is going to go off. The island's going to be locked tight from the airport to town, and and we're going to be in the middle of it. And Nat Lowell's going to be home happy that there's cars everywhere, and sorry, Nat, and we're going to be in the middle of it. So I think that's where I am.
Tom?
I would just say that there's a very large difference between having a business and being licensed by, say, the health department, and then there being a gathering permit for amorphous definitions. Like that one's kind of black and white, you need it. I understand the sentiment behind it, but this is kind of ties into I don't mean to go back to the STR thing, but in the wider sense about the debate on STRs, this is really difficult. This is the kind of stuff we got into on the short-term rental work group, and why we pared it down so much is because some of the things that folks were upset about just aren't possible to do, like the Commerce Clause stuff about separating non-islanders from islanders. You can't do that. And I think the gathering part is different than having a licensed business in a place you can't have it.
Or having an unlicensed business in a place you can't have it. If you have an unlicensed, sorry, I had to be argumentative, but if I open a sandwich shop and don't get my license, and I have a sandwich shop in my house, or someone is having a food business and they're doing lunches and dinners for people, and they're found out, they're shut down. So that's kind of the.
Yeah, I missed the word "on."
Yeah.
Caroline Baltzer. I'm just thinking about that famous book about Nantucket, Holiday Island. We are a holiday island, and given that the case that Judge Vey is ruling on, the Ward case, the complaint, as I listened to it, and both the trials in person, was that the people next door, one of the complaints were they were on vacation and they were making vacation noises. And this was troublesome to the plaintiff. It was one of the complaints. So I just wanted to bring that up because if that's the reference point, then when the select board members are encouraging people to make sure they file the complaints this summer so that it doesn't get built up, what type of complaints are we encouraging people to file? Thank you.
I mean, I would assume that that would be noise violations, parking violations, and so forth, would be the.
Yeah, if you're asking me, because and the reason I think they should put things on the record is because when you complain later and say, well, I had this happen 5 times in my neighborhood, and we go look at it was loud and it kept us up 5 times, we will go look in the record and there won't be any note of it. So if people are having issues, I think they should actually call and even if they don't want the police to show up, if they're like, it's really loud, we need to know. So we as a board and the town itself can make decisions based on actual facts. We've got to put them somewhere or they don't exist that's my thinking on this. And I don't want to make more work for everybody, but the problem is, we didn't call, we don't see anything, nothing happened. Well, I think a lot of things sometimes happen. So anyway.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd agree with that because one of the issues we had was really defining the problem. We had one obvious significant issue last summer and people would call me, but they never really reported. If you report it, then as we move forward, we can define the problem a lot better. And so I think, I guess we should move on to the other issue on the agenda, but I just don't want this to stop here. It's an issue on this island. People are angry. And I think my colleague next to me expressed it well. There's people that are running businesses on this island that are not accessory use, in my view. They're businesses. And that's I don't want to start, we could be here all night if we start this again, but I think this board has a responsibility, let this issue not just say we had a nice conversation and go home.
No, this is a very valid issue to be discussing.
Absolutely.
And I hope that we'll get some feedback from people out there. Feel free to email us or talk to us with ideas because also, with the STR thing in general, I've always gone back to what exactly is the issue we're trying to fix. And that kind of feedback is really important in regard to these event type situations. Tom?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I was just I completely agree with Malcolm. My only point is here, I'm not trying to defend whatever side here, it's just that on process reasons, it's difficult to put what people are upset about and codify that into a regulation and say, oh, here's the silver bullet or bullets. That's my only point on process.
Thank you. Can we talk about the septic moratorium?
Yes. Let's do that next.
Point of order, Madam Chair?
Oh, yes.
Is there going to be a more general discussion of licensing enforcement of short-term rentals? That was on the agenda.
You touched on it, but did you want to get further into that with us?
I was gonna do the moratorium. We'll go back to the other issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that this minute?
That's fine. Go ahead.
All right. So we're asked to update you all on the recent moratorium that the Board of Health voted unanimously at the last meeting. And just, the motion is, I'll read it so everyone understands it, and then I'll explain it. To adopt a temporary moratorium of 90 days on considering variance applications for new construction if they are using an IA system to accommodate more bedrooms so that the board can study the issue and make better informed decisions on such applications.
Is your mic on?
No.
Oh, no, it's not.
Can you turn it on and repeat that, please?
I'll read it again. To adopt a temporary moratorium of 90 days on considering variance applications for new construction if they propose using an IA system to accommodate more bedrooms so that the board can study the issue and make better informed decisions on such applications. The moratorium shall not apply to applications to replace or upgrade failed systems as long as there is no increased flow, and it will not apply to applications that do not require variances. So in the background, the Board of Health has traditionally granted what we could call nitrogen loading variances to allow for more bedrooms in property when an IA septic system is installed. And as you all know, an IA system is generally considered more efficient and better for the environment than a conventional system. And that's what we studied and we put in the IA regulations years ago. That was the standard of the time. But recently, however, it has been suggested that increasing the number of bedrooms on a property is more detrimental to the health and environment of the island, and that the benefits of an IA system do not significantly offset that harm. Wow. That sort of has seeped in the last couple months. And the last couple meetings, we actually had significant testimony suggesting that perhaps having more bedrooms did not necessarily, was not the best thing to do, even though the IA system was better. Because we're really talking about nitrogen, not other activities. And in fact, the last two agendas, we had more variance requests to get a bedroom credit than we had any other item on the agenda. And we're kind of sitting there thinking, my God, this is the Board of Health, and we're talking almost like we're the building department are here. So we thought that maybe it was time to kind of take a time out and really study the situation. Because of course we had the Land and Water Council telling us that, more bedrooms was not a good idea. We had engineers telling us that, of course, an IA system was better for the environment. And I think we needed to really study that. So at the July meeting, there will be an expert or two that will come and educate the board. Now, I expect that there won't be any great conclusions. Of course, if we have 2 experts, we'll have 6 opinions. And there'll be a great debate, but at least we'll be educated. Because the board really hasn't had a scientific update on the whole system until, maybe 10 years ago when we first started talking about IA systems. So science changes, regulations change, environment changes. So I think it was time that the board just took a time out and dealt with this. Because certainly when you see an agenda that all your Board of Health is doing is giving variances so people can build more bedrooms, it's time to take a deep breath. That's what we're doing. And the moratorium will end on the September Board of Health meeting, which is the 3rd Thursday of the month. So the July meeting will essentially, an expert from the mainland is coming, as well as a suggestion from the Land and Water Council to discuss this. Because what we're seeing is, one house, 2 house there, that's fine. But when they're all in the same area, and we're giving 6 bedroom credits in a small area, then I think we have to think about that. Every variance, of course, is difficult. So we can't have a policy. If we have a policy, then we need a regulation, because every variance requires a certain individual assessment. But I think the board needs to be a little better educated to make those assessments. Questions?
Tom?
Malcolm, I understand that any pending application in front of the Board of Health, by law, you have to act on within 45 days. Is that true?
That is correct. By law, we have 45 days to act. So any application that's still pending, a lot of them we've put off for another month, and the applicants have agreed to that. But those applications that have been submitted by law have to be acted in 45 days. If they're not, by law, they just go into effect.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on a topic that I bring up fairly often about the sensitive areas of the island, and so we're looking at nitrogen, but there's other pollutants. And so, okay, we need to bring sewer, we have to bring sewer. Well, it's gonna benefit the environment. And I say, okay, it's gonna benefit it. How? Do we know that for sure? You know, what about all the other stuff that comes with it, all the runoff and the hardscaping and all those other things when we do that? Is that really a net benefit or, you know, so I think, you know, so for you guys to make, for the town, for you or for the town to make a decision, will you have information on what the real impacts will be? Is there gonna be any study, any measure of groundwater or infiltration or, you know, anything from here or other places that will help inform this, you know, going forward?
Well, we'll see what happens at the July meeting, what information is presented. I would recommend you all go. I think it'll be quite an interesting science education.
So I'll take that as a yes. Someone's gonna tell us something we don't know.
Well, someone's going to tell us something we don't know. I mean, it's all out there here and there in the literature. It's just, you need people kind of put it all together for you.
So I'm just, you said that this just got raised at the last meeting because of having more than usual on the agenda. I'm kind of trying to wrap my head around the fact that this has been somewhat of a policy that people have counted on for way more than 10 years, decades, where people, if they were willing to invest in an IA system, that expense generally afforded them an additional bedroom. And that's just been a given for a really long time. And I mean, you know that I do worry about infringing on people's property rights or their expectations. It just seems very out of the blue that this became such a large concern, and it may be perfectly valid, and I look forward to hearing the scientific evidence, but it just kind of, it feels like it came out of nowhere.
Well, I don't think it came out of the blue, Madam Chair. If you go into our meetings, maybe my other colleagues can tell you, but this has been kind of coming up in the background for, I would say, the last few months. And what generally we would vote approve these, occasionally now we're starting to get one or two people on the board starting to vote against it and starting to raise this issue. So I wouldn't say it came out of the blue. I would say it was smoldering. And we actually discussed this a couple times about having a moratorium. So it wasn't out of the blue. And I agree, I don't like to infringe on people's property rights either, but we also have to take care of this island. And when you have I think we had one request that someone was actually going to take out an active system to put in an IA system so we could have another bedroom. And in one case, well, there's one case where we had 6 or 8 bedrooms in one small area. And that's a significant environmental impact. Maybe the facts are such that if 6 or 8 IA systems would be better, but I haven't seen I have to see the data. I have to understand this scientifically, and not just because we've always done it. And it hasn't really been policy. You really can't have a policy on a variance. A variance has to be an individual decision based on the individual situation. And that's the way it's been. But things change and science changes. The beauty of science, see, everyone always says, well, the science says, the science says. Science by nature changes with time. That's what pure science is. And if things have evolved in the last 10 or 15 years, we need to know about it and we need to study it and we have to understand it.
I have another question. Is part of this, does any of this have to do with sort of the by right accessory dwelling units? Is there any discussion of that, a concern about that, where we can't deny those? Is that?
No, that's never been a
Hasn't
discussion.
been thought about that in this regard.
We usually have given these variances based on the fact that an IA system for nitrogen, okay, is better than a conventional system. But there are other things that we have to consider.
Here's another, if I can, one other question.
Please.
Is there some concern that these systems have to get started again every season and then So they, they're not, they're dormant and they're sitting for 6, 8 months, 9 months, and then they have to get the bugs going again.
I'm
and
not so
work.
sure. I would ask our experts here.
Yeah, is there any concern of that? Is there any way?
John knows more about any of this.
But this is his favorite
He is
topic.
he is our island expert. And in fact, you know what an expert is? An expert is someone that comes from another city with slides. Okay? So
It charges you a lot of
Right,
money.
So I suspect that if John went to Barnstable, he would be praised for being an expert coming from another city, and I'm sure he would have slides.
Says the doctor and PhD.
John Hedden, Chief Environmental Health Officer with the Health Department. There is a little bit of concern of that. It does take, like you said, about a month for those systems to get going. We've kind of had some small talks with the sewer department actually about bag of bugs is kind of what you would do to install it to get things going faster, so.
Yeah. And so you drop some, you'd drop some stuff and get it
Yeah,
going. All
yep.
right.
Open the cover and drop them in.
Any other questions, comments from anyone? Again, this just moratorium on last till September.
Was this specific to any areas that are like, harbor watershed, like significant areas of concern?
Well, it's any nitrogen sensitive area is of concern. So this is not, this is just, we just have to look at things and take a timeout.
No, I mean, you said that there was a grouping of them all.
There
in the
was
same
grouping of them.
location. So what
Yes.
was that location?
That was on Woodland Drive and Lover's Lane.
The other thing that worries me a little bit, are we going to have a huge push to sewer Nantucket now? Because that's going to be a really expensive project if we're not going to approve these anymore. So just another thing to think about. Very expensive, very disruptive, long project. Frank Daly has his hand up online.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I just have a kind of broad concern. The moratorium was stated that this came into effect because there was and I'm quoting here, suggestion that perhaps there is an issue, and that generally that, again, quoting, that we need to take care of the island. Those are really broad statements for something that is really significant. There is, from what I can see, and I know that there's going to be a presentation in about a month's time, no signs that I've ever found that shows that an IA system is detrimental in any way. It's always a net positive. Now, how that pertains to bedroom count certainly can be discussed, but the point of an IA system is to process nitrogen faster. So it's always a net benefit to have a system. They cost more, there's more maintenance, it's harder on the homeowner. But as far as an environmental impact, it's proven time and time again to benefit Nantucket, regardless if it's near a resource center or not. It's a good thing for the island. But I'll let the scientists point all that stuff out. I'm just concerned that such a huge swing in island policy that impacts so many people is starting from the point of a quote saying there was a suggestion that perhaps there could be an issue, rather than starting with hard science indicating that there was a problem. So I hope that is taken into consideration moving forward.
If I may answer that, you say perhaps there is and all. Well, my concern was we had people telling us and people testifying that it was an issue. And I did not want to go off and have the board start making decisions based on one individual or one organization making a certain comments. I think we have to get an outside opinion. It may be that we just continue what we're doing. But again, it's not a policy to let an IA system use for bedroom credits. A policy would require that we had a regulation change. A variance goes individual to individual.
No, it just has really been common practice that people
It's a common
come
practice.
to rely upon, and there really wasn't any
Right,
real
but the
public hearing for this, and it's, it does impact people pretty greatly if they had a certain plan that now they can't do.
well, it's 6 months. It's till September. It's not even 6 months.
Well,
right.
I mean, you should consider what 3 months of construction delay actually would cost someone, especially if they've got a mortgage to deal with. So just,
I don't disagree.
I worry, of course, I am concerned about the health of the island, but it's very hard to change a common practice that people have really relied on with very little prior notice.
Madam Chair, if you'd gone to some of those meetings, there was almost a momentum of the select board, of the Board of Health, starting to deny these because of this concern that they weren't as effective. So I think we did the right thing, because that would have been a real disaster. We would have stopped what people expected based on one organization or one or two people's opinion without being invented properly. So I'm quite convinced this was the right thing to do. It wasn't perfect. Nothing is perfect, but this had to be done. Or you would be here yelling and screaming at me. You've stopped all those variances. And that's what, if you looked at the board and the sense of the board, that's what was happening.
Okay, well, I'll go back and watch the meetings. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm
Tom?
sorry. You can go, Tom.
No, Matt, please.
No, I'm willing, I'm concerned from a different angle. I'm worried that we're gonna, wait and not really have that much more information, and have that much more clarity. And so if this is giving us the chance to have the clarity needed to make a good decision, then I'm all for it, so.
Okay, did you have
Actually,
another
yeah, just going to
comment?
briefly comment. So I am going to be the Board of Health rep for Select Board, thank you, coming up. And so I did go back and watch your previous meetings on this and the discussion. And I understand that the IA systems are significantly cleaner. And so I know the board was talking about trade-offs here, which is my buzzword for this year, I suppose. Trade-offs and other forms of purviews of the Board of Health, let's just say. So I'm sure we'll have a robust discussion on that at the Board of Health and hear what the benefits to an IA system versus, as Mr. Daly was commenting or alluded to, versus a conventional system. Some of the comments at your board meetings, I was thinking about, okay, well, if somebody adds a bedroom and then they're going to use it X amount of time, how do you quantify that? I know you kind of went down that road, so I don't know how that kind of gets into the discussion, but these are the kind of process things that I was thinking about. And then what the universe of choices would be moving forward to what a new policy could be. If it's black or white, if it's this or it's, so we'll have to see.
We have to see. There'll never be a policy and nothing will be black or white. I just think the people of the board be a little better educated to make the right decisions.
Okay.
I don't know if any of my board members want to comment. Ms. Smith, the vice chair.
I think that if you sat at a Board of Health meeting, you would understand exactly where we're going with this. What has happened is that these variances for septic systems are taking up 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the meeting, because there are so many. And whenever we approve a variance for any reason, not just this, there needs to be a risk benefit. And we on the board do not understand what the risk benefit is yet. We need to gather more information. We need to have more science. We need to see the pros and the cons. we need to understand, are we doing the island a favor or are we doing them a disfavor in approving them? And I think that's the reason for just saying, okay, instead of, as Malcolm said, instead of saying no, because that's what people were beginning to do, say, we don't get it, and so we're going to say no. The idea was to bring in some experts. Apparently this guy from Barnstable is a real expert. We'll see, but let's hope. And find out what the real stuff is. And I think then we can all talk a little bit more cogently and really understand what we're doing.
Thank you. Did you want to move on to the STR? Back to A. The licensing and enforcement.
I'm not sure exactly what that is. The topic was for.
I mean, I believe you had said that you were concerned at one point about whether it should, whether it's appropriate for the enforcement to be through the Board of Health.
I've always said that, and I'm concerned, and I think we touched on it in the earlier discussion, is with short-term rentals should be managed and enforced by the health department, instead of the Board of Health. And if you look at the Massachusetts guidelines of the duties of the local boards of health, it's not there. And there are other communities that have used the Board of Health to regulate short-term rentals, but I think it shouldn't be there. It's not a health issue. And in fact, I mean, my colleagues, the health department, they've had more health issues in non-short-term rentals over the years than in short-term rentals. I don't know how he feels. Maybe our health director loves the idea that he has to deal with this or not, but to me, it's a health issue. It's not a health issue. It should be elsewhere. I don't know the rest of the feeling or the community's feeling, but I've said that since it first came to the health department.
Rebecca Duham. As many of you are aware, I've been an advocate for short-term rental registration since the outset. I would second what Dr. McNabb is saying. Sorry. I would second what Dr. McNabb is saying about the question about where this belongs. Certainly from the standpoint of someone who is a short-term rental operator who's looking for the regulations to be enforced, executed and enforced crisply, because those of us who are responsible SDR operators are hurt when the accusation flies around the community that there are irresponsible operators. That's not us. So we want to see it executed and enforced crisply. I don't know where this gets resolved in terms of if there's another way the town can staff it. So, but I would like to acknowledge that the health department, I think, has done an amazing job, given resource constraints, trying to execute this. But as I raised in my question from June 4th, there are bylaws that the citizenry has passed that are not part of the regulation yet. And it's been asked that things like enforcement of, keeping out corporate ownership and real estate, the REIT entities. And the response comes back, well, that's not in the regulation, so it's not going to get enforced, but it's in the bylaw. I'm a relatively new wash ashore. I still have sand in my shoes. So this is kind of new to me, but this is important that this gets staffed appropriately and executed, both for those who are concerned about short-term rentals and those of us who are responsible owners who want everybody held equally accountable. So thank you.
Thank you. Charity Ben's online.
She snuck out on us.
I want to compliment, thank you. I want to compliment the prior speaker for talking about people who follow the rules and try to run their businesses, if that's what they are, responsibly. And having had some interaction with the Board of Health and the Health Department in particular over the last probably 18 months, I can understand their frustration. But I'd like to offer a suggestion that there may be an opportunity here to gain confidence of the community in terms of enforcement. By possibly shifting the responsibility for the administration of this program to the finance department. The research that our group has done over the last 18 months shows that many of the programs that are run in local communities are placed in the finance department. Even if you just did it as a pilot program to see, but we've seen a very, since my time on the finance committee, we've seen a dramatic improvement in the running of the finance department. And in view of the fact that this is where many communities place their short-term rental program and its management, maybe that's something that the select board would like to consider. But I have to say, I think if, given all of the conversation that's gone on before, enforcement is very important. And if you, from my own experience involved in law enforcement, if you have a robust program and you lay out the rules, people like the lady who just spoke, follows them, are what you want. And our research, that's Nantucket Neighborhoods First, has shown that this very dramatic finding of 1,295 registrations so far, in the face of comments that have been made at many town meetings that there are 2,000, 3,000 short-term rentals on Nantucket. There's something wrong here. And however you can fix it, and you can gain the confidence of the community, that their voices will be heard. If there are problems, they will be addressed. I think you will be able to solve this problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I mean, I think it's a good discussion to raise, but ultimately how resources are deployed and through what department is a decision for the town manager. When we can give input, but.
I think it's an interesting suggestion, and the reason I do is Charity made a good point at the end, is that there has to be sort of trust in the process. I'm talking to a lot of different people right now from different sides of short-term rental, and people are throwing ideas about what can happen that can be a unified, simple thing that can be passed. And one of the things that trips people up is enforcement. You know, a lot of people are like, well, I'm not voting for anything because of the enforcement. I'm not voting because they won't do this or this won't do that. And so I think, you know, sort of, and I keep trying to explain that that's a hill to climb later. We have to do, you know, we've got to do the first thing first, which is find a simple, unified article that people can agree on. You know, that's number one. And then I think enforcement is number two. And I think looking at the right way to do it and the right place to put it, I think should be part of that when the time comes. Thank you.
I would just also add that from a health and safety standpoint, I think all rentals should be registered if we're going to regulate them, not just short-term. I think that there's a lot more hazards that tend to happen when people are in for longer occupancies, like smoke detectors that get the batteries taken out and those kind of instances. So at some point, I would like to see us broaden the range where every rental applies for a registry. Anybody else? Good discussion. I don't think we've really made any decisions.
So
but
a
gave
lot
you some
has to do
input.
with town manager and how she organizes her. She's heard my opinion.
Okay, are we okay to move on to the next item on our agenda?
I am.
Number 3 of, oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Do I have a motion to adjourn from the select board?
I would love to. but
Yes,
we
let's
still-
go.
I would like to, Malcolm, but
Oh, yes, good idea. Okay, Board of Health. Ms. Cooper, do I hear a second? Do I hear a second?
To adjourn.
I hear a second. All in favor, say aye. 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 We're adjourned.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Affordable Housing Trust, a request for approval and execution of a letter of support of the Nantucket Land Trust's application to be recognized as an organization and exempt from federal income tax. Good evening.
Hi again, Dylan Metchenpel, Deputy Housing Director. So the town's housing office is requesting that the select board approve and execute a letter in support of Nantucket Land Trust, Inc.'s application to be recognized as an organization exempt from federal income tax. Tucker Holland, the town's former housing director, is leading the effort to establish the Nantucket Land Trust. Their mission is to help address the year-round housing affordability and attainability crisis on the island, and their work will complement and supplement the ongoing housing efforts being carried out by the Housing Office, the Affordable Housing Trust, and nonprofit organizations like Housing Nantucket. The Land Trust model is distinct from current efforts and organizations because it works to increase affordable and attainable housing by separating the ownership of the land and the ownership of the homes. The Land Trust will own the land while the residents will own their homes. This gives folks home ownership opportunities and many of the associated benefits, while the Land Trust also restricts the land for affordable and year-round housing in perpetuity. Given the crisis the town is facing regarding housing for essential municipal employees, the Land Trust plans to prioritize essential workers like DPW and first responders. The Land Trust model has been successful nationally and across the Commonwealth, including the Berkshire Community Land Trust, Amherst Community Land Trust, the Boston Neighborhood Community Land Trust, and Island Housing Trust on Martha's Vineyard. The Nantucket Land Trust will be a huge boon to affordable and attainable year-round housing on Nantucket. Critically, Tucker's and the Land Trust's efforts are in direct alignment with the board's strategic plan, which explicitly identifies the Land Trust model as a powerful tool for addressing Nantucket's housing crisis. The Affordable Housing Trust unanimously voted to endorse the letter at their last meeting on June 17th. And before I finish, I just want to say Tucker Holland and Penny Dye, who's a member of the Land Trust board, are here tonight and can help answer questions if necessary. Thanks.
Does anybody have any questions? I mean, I think we could just go right to a vote on this.
I just did one simple question I might know the answer to, Madam Chair. This is the fourth or so organization that deals with affordable housing. How do we keep it all coordinated?
Good evening, Tucker Holland, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be with you all tonight, and several of the board members are here, Penny Dye, Billy Cassidy, and John Kitchener. So how do we coordinate?
I mean, yes, you've got at least 4 organizations that deal with this.
Yeah, so
I hate duplication and uncoordination.
and we're on the same page with you. So we, presently have Habitat for Humanity, which services the 80% AMI level and less with home ownership opportunity. You have Housing Nantucket that has a long-standing rental program expanding just across the street with Wiggles Way, and a home ownership program in their Covenant program, which is really a zoning encouragement program. You have the Affordable Housing Trust, which has moved in recent years toward really being the funding entity for
housing efforts across the island. And then, of course, you have the Housing Authority, which is kind of a creature unto itself because of state regulations, federal regulations, and that services the low and extremely low income level, principally through rental opportunity. We are coming in focused on homeownership opportunity at the attainable level. So it would be above what Habitat is presently serving. And there has been a very good effort over the course of the last 5 years for communication amongst all of the housing stakeholders. In fact, that is the name of the group that meets monthly, involving all of those organizations and more, to be aware of what the right and left hand are doing. And this is an area that was identified as a need for the island. As we all know, the need goes well beyond the traditional capital A affordable housing. People who are earning what otherwise would be good money off island struggle, we all know, to find suitable, stable housing that is affordable or attainable to them. So this is another tool in the quiver. There's no one organization that's going to solve the problem. It's going to take a dozen different approaches, and this is one that Dylan so well explained has worked in a number of other communities with some similarities to our own.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Some second Matt's motion. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously.
Madam Chair, briefly?
Yes.
I would just say that in addition to Tucker, on Tucker's board, Billy, John, and Penny here, also on Tucker's board is Philippe Jordy, who runs Island Housing Trust on the Vineyard, who knows an awful lot about this, and him and Laura Silber on the Vineyard, who Tucker and everyone is very close to, can certainly help hit Tucker and the board through setting up and the works of this. So I think it's terrific. Thank you, Tucker.
Thanks, Tom. Next up, B, we have request for review and execution of acknowledgement of termination of affordable housing restriction, declaration of cross easements, partial release of mortgage, and consent to sale of open space portion of the Wigglesway property. Christy.
Thank you. Christy Ferrantella, the Municipal Housing Director. This agenda item, Housing Nantucket, is seeking to transfer Lot 9 of the 31 Fairgrounds Road subdivision to the land bank. Per the special permit, the portion of the property is required to be maintained as open space under the flex development zoning provisions, and a conservation restriction must be held by a nonprofit or government agency. The land bank was a natural fit to fulfill this role because of their mission aligns perfectly with the intended use of the parcel. As many have driven by and seen, this is the open space in front of Wiggles Way. The land bank will assume the long-term responsibility for maintenance, including mowing, upkeep, and monitoring, and they perform these duties on their other properties across the island. This ensures that the space is consistently and professionally maintained while relieving Housing Nantucket of the maintenance responsibilities. The documents in your packet for select board approval are the acknowledgement of the termination of the affordable housing restriction, a declaration of cross easement, and consent to sale of the open space portion subject to a regulatory agreement. Vicki Marsh from Town Council is online and can answer any specific questions about the documents. But to summarize, since the trust and therefore the board is a lender to the property, we have to consent to the sale of this lot. The acknowledgement of the termination of the affordable housing restriction recognizes that the entire parcel, which was 31 Fairgrounds, had the restriction on it, and that restriction will be removed for the sale for open space. The Affordable Housing Trust unanimously approved these documents as well as the partial release of mortgage at their June 17th meeting. And the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, EOHLC, has approved the documents and will sign after the Select Board and the Affordable Housing Trust has signed. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have questions about this? No. I will say it's been really nice to see kids running around on that lawn. Matt?
Yeah, just how was, did they contribute for this? Was there money that changed hands? Is it a half acre? And how much money?
Tracy, what's the total? Tracy's going to look at the total acreage, but the land bank contributed in the installation of the well, on the landscaping of that parcel, and getting it ready for the occupants.
So they didn't have to buy the land, they did the work on the land. I'm just trying to, just get a ballpark for what was the contribution, to give them credit, because everyone says they aren't, a lot of people.
Oh, no,
are
they were a major partner in
Okay,
this.
I
and
just, a
they
lot
did
of people are saying
contribute.
they're not helping housing, et cetera. I wanted to, if they gave you $1 million, I wanted to be able to give them credit for that.
No,
So,
they did contribute to the property and, again, to help get it up and running with the landscaping and the well for the irrigation.
all right.
Vicky Marsh has her hand raised, so I think she might be able to answer that.
Oh, Vicky? You're muted. Vicky, we can't hear you. No, Vicky, no, there's no volume. I'm sorry.
I'm ready to make a motion,
Okay,
if that's,
okay. Is there a
I'll move,
second?
I'll move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Sorry, Vicky. Thank you.
I was just trying to give them credit. All right,
Matt, can you just take over for 1 second?
yep. Okay, we're on number 4 for Nantucket Conservation Foundation. Request for a waiver of the town noise bylaw from 10 to 11 for Bash in the Bog event, Saturday, July 12th at the Milestone Cranberry Bog. Who's gonna,
Dina Weatherly's online.
all right. All right, Dina?
Thanks for having me. Dina Weatherly, Cultural Affairs and Special Events Coordinator for the town, and the applicant, Whitney Dayton Brunette of the Conservation Foundation. Well, she's not the applicant, but she's here to represent the Conservation Foundation for any questions. But the Conservation Foundation is requesting to waive/extend the noise ordinance for Bash in the Bog. It's going to be taking place on July 12th until 11 p.m. That's the request, just 1 hour, and it'll be held at 220 Milestone Road. And this is their biannual fundraiser. So the last time it was held, and I believe the noise waiver was approved last time as well in 2023. So they're just asking for that extension because there will be live music on the premises. And as the event wraps up, there will be some residual noise from 10 to 11, but they don't anticipate that it will go past 11 o'clock. So my recommendation was to approve with the condition that there is a hard stop at 11 o'clock in line with the town code that says that these waivers can be granted by the select board. And for any specific question regarding the music or the event, I believe.
Okay,
Whitney
thank you
might-
very much. Do I have any questions from the board? Tom?
Did we approve this 2 years ago?
Yes.
Got it. Then no, if no one else has any questions, I'd make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So it's 3-0. Okay, traffic safety recommendations?
Control L could. There we go. Thank you, Madam Chair. This item involves recommendations from the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee and Traffic Safety staff for signage at bike path crossings along some bike paths. Next, please. So you know, there is a state law, Mass General Law 80, 9, Section 11, for protection of pedestrians at marked crosswalks. Under state law, bicyclists are required to dismount and walk their bikes at crossings to have the same protections as pedestrians. Alternatively, bicyclists are required to yield right-of-way and use caution at crossings. Under the local bylaw, Section 57-14, protections are extended to bicyclists, pedestrians, and other legal path users who have the right-of-way at crossings. Next, please. Since the local bylaw conflicts with state law and the Mass DOT design standards, staff has coordinated with BPAC, the Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and traffic safety staff to discuss options. As noted in the Mass DOT design guide, stop signs are to be placed facing path users at crossings with stop bars, centerline markings, and stop ahead signage. Next, please. To abide the local bylaw, there has been previous suggestions for removing signage facing path users and adding signage for vehicle traffic at crosswalks to yield right-of-way to path users. This suggestion was developed by BPAC and was not supported by traffic safety staff. I'll share 2 examples. Next, please. At South Cambridge Street in Nantucket, BPAC had recommended the design shown in the previous slide, and traffic safety recommended many stop signs remain to alert users of an unsafe condition and use caution. Additionally, this location needed better marked crossings to alert both path users and vehicle traffic of a path crossing. Next, please. Similarly, at the dump driveway, BPAC recommended removal of stop signs, while traffic safety recommended keeping the signs and adding better marked crossings. Next, please. The compromise agreed to by BPAC and traffic safety was placing many stop signs for replacing the many stop signs for path users with many intersection caution signage at crossings, except at major intersections and driveways. And there's the yellow diamonds there with the cross for the caution for an intersection sign. Next, please. For Pulpus bike path, stop signs are still recommended at the end of the path, entering the village of Sconset, where path users transition from the path to sharing the road. Other locations are recommended to have intersection caution signage and cross markings as shown on the right-hand side of the slide. Next, please. For the Nantucket bike path, stop signs are still recommended at Dukes Road, where sight lines are challenging, and at the landfill driveway, which has already been discussed. Other locations are recommended to have the intersection caution signage and crossing markings as shown on the right-hand side. Next, please. For Hummock Pond Road bike path, stop signs are still recommended at Milk Street, where the path transitions to a side path along Milk Street, Somerset Lane, which is a busy intersection with a relatively high crash rate, and Bartlett Farm Road, which is a busy intersection. Other locations also recommended to have the intersection caution signage and crosswalk markings as shown on the right-hand side. Next, please. For Milestone bike path, stop signs are still recommended at the Noble Farm Road, New South Road, and Tom Nevers Road, which are very busy intersections. The new path on the north side of the roadway should also have stop signs as discussed with the DPW director, but that recommendation was not part of this batch of locations. Other locations are recommended to have the intersection caution signs and marked crossings on the right-hand side. Next, please. Madam Chair, the BPAC recommendations for the path crossings were made at their April 23rd, 2025 meeting. Traffic safety staff recommended these at the May 15th, not 2023, as 2025 meeting. The requested action is to authorize the use of the BPAC and traffic safety recommended bike path crossing signage and marking designs for the locations presented along Pulpus Road, Nantucket Road, Hummock Pond Road, and Milestone Road. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the board, questions from the public?
I'll just make a comment. I think it's great that this is happening. This is, I was actually hit at South Cambridge by a car that didn't stop at the stop sign and just pulled through, even though I had stopped, and then started again, and they came right into me. This is, about 10 years ago. I think that what has happened having 4 stop signs is the cars all believed that they had the right of way. And they would yell at you as you biked. They would yell at the bicyclist, "You have to stop, you have to stop," as they didn't stop. And so I think that this is, sort of, I would love to get rid of the sign pollution and get rid of some of the warnings, but let's leave the warnings and try this. But I think this is a great thing. So thank you, Mike.
Anybody else?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay. Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously.
All right, the next item is Tacoma Way, and traffic safety staff met on this and is recommending the installation of a no parking either side sign on the southwest side of Tacoma Way from the southern end of the public layout to approximately 50 feet northwest of Amelia Drive, and install a no overnight parking here to corner sign on the southwest side of Tacoma Way, plus or minus 50 feet northwest of Amelia Drive with an arrow pointed to Fairgrounds Road. This is to prohibit overnight parking, but it does not prohibit daytime use for services and any spillover of traffic from Amelia that might need Death Park.
Any questions?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimously.
Thank you. And the final recommendation, the genesis of this was at traffic safety in coordination with fire. The request here at Center Street at Lily Street is to extend a no parking yellow line to the north, on the north side of Center Street, 20 feet, which would remove one parking space from the intersection of Lily Street. This would remove one parking space and better accommodate right turn movements from Lily Street onto Center Street. And I believe the fire chief could explain the need to do this, but that was the genesis of this request.
Questions?
Yeah, just a quick comment. It will also take how big is it? 20 feet. It'll take at least one car off the sidewalk.
Exactly.
Because they park fully on the sidewalk there, even though they don't have to. You know, so they start parking there, even though it's wide enough not to, and they sit there all the time. So, you know, we're taking one car off, so I favor that. So I'll move approval.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, may I ask Mike one question quick? Mike, Brooke asked me, she's away, asked me to ask you a question about the signs on the bike paths. Is that going to be evaluated for Bartlett Road?
That would be the next step, is to look at other paths.
Okay.
On the island. This was just the first batch that was a manageable array of paths that we could take a look at, make recommendations, and then we'll carry that forward as a next step.
Got it, thank you.
And these are all the ones that BPAC worked on for years and sort of have been trying to get done for a long time. So they had it all written down, and there was a broad agreement that the major crossings, they need to stop, and they should be enforced and told to. But the other ones, they shouldn't have to, and this is going to do that, which is great.
Erica?
This might be an internal thing, but I've just asked that we notify area abutters where we're removing on-street parking. We've been having some complaints when people come back and parking is gone that they're used to, so.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Next up, town manager report.
Thank you. I did not have time to prepare a full written report like I normally do, so I'm going to give you a verbal. And I know we're getting a little later, so I'll try to keep it concise. We have a lot of things going on in town administration and the other departments, and a lot of our time recently has been spent on the following. We're continuing our Island Home efforts. We've got a lot going on there. We've got various potential property acquisition proposals under evaluation at the direction of the board. We had several town admin staff, including communications and other departments, including emergency management staff, spent quite a bit of time over the weekend responding to the water pump failure. And I want to really acknowledge our water director, Mark Willett, who's out ill now for a few days. So we're not able to have him here to review what happened, which we had hoped could be arranged. But in any event, it's resolved. And we spent a lot of time putting out social media all over the weekend. And thank you also to our comms staff, because they were basically all weekend working on this. We've already started our fiscal 27 budget prep. We haven't even started fiscal 26 yet, but we're getting ready to gear up for fiscal 27, both budget and capital projects. It was brought up under public comment that the composter has been down. Yes, it has been down. It's down for annual maintenance annually, typically around February when usage is low. We will have a much fuller report about this in the next, for public comment at your next meeting. Comms is also working on several video series initiatives to help explain the details, background, reasoning behind various programs and projects for the public. We just did one for CSOs. We're working on them for various solid waste related activities, town government, town meeting, road projects, things like that, that there's a lot of public comment on. A lot of it is not accurate and not based in fact. So we're working on getting that type of information out. And there is a lot of information on the town website if people wanted to look there for information. Strategic plan, your strategic planning process, we issued and governance and other types of things that we typically use consulting services for. As you know, we had been using the firm Raftellus, and the principal of that firm, Julia Novak, took the position of ICMA executive director several months ago. So she's no longer with Raftellus. The contract expired anyway, so we've put out an RFP for those services. We got 3 responses back. We're going to be interviewing 2 firms. We've asked the chair to be involved in those interviews, and hopefully we'll have somebody to put forward to you for a pending contract very shortly. The annual fall strategic plan retreat, we've talked about, rather than redoing the strategic plan, maybe do touch on that, but focus more on all of the various other plans that are within the town government, how they integrate, how they're operationalized, how they overlap, whose responsibility it is with the agencies that have developed those plans, so that we all have a common understanding of who's doing what and what the expectations are. It's in development, but that's the kind of a thinking for the fall strategic plan retreat. Nantucket coastal resiliency projects, we've been spending a lot of time with staff on those. We have a summer meeting coming up in July with Nantucket residents to review those projects and where they stand. Downtown coastal resiliency projects, as you all remember a few months ago. We had the downtown flood barrier update, and there are a lot of moving parts on that, including where to locate a necessary pump station. So lots of staff are involved in figuring that out. Many staff people are involved in summer meetings with different associations that typically meet during the summer. You all are involved in the Nantucket Civic League Annual Summer Forum coming up on July 21st. Thank you. It's at the Athenaeum. I think it starts at 9:30. Our HR department, I really want to give a shout out to them. They are coming for the monthly departmental report at your next meeting. They've spent a tremendous amount of time on employee well-being programs, which I think have been pretty well received. Several people in our office have taken advantage of them, and they are really important right now, especially when civility is at a low. We had a mini retreat this week, myself, the 2 deputies, and the HR director. We're trying to sort out our workload volume challenges. We've got a lot on our plate, and we're trying to work through where the items are best handled. And are they in other departments? Who handles them, me or one of those 2 or somebody else entirely? Or do we more or less put it off in some fashion? So anyway, it was really quite helpful. We, of course, are spending lots of time, all the departments are, on summer prep, and basically the prep is kind of over and we're launching in, as Matt said earlier. We are spending a lot of time on public comment responses, and we want to, because a lot of public comments are either not accurate or don't contain seem to contain misinformation. Probably not intentionally, I would hope not intentionally, but as it was commented earlier in one of the public comment responses, it seems to be appreciated that we tend to give very full and detailed responses. And like I said, we want to, because we want to get correct information out there, but it does take quite a bit of time. And several staff are involved in it. We usually have to go to the department, get their information, put it into wording that is understandable and makes sense, and sometimes some other research is needed. Email. I know everybody in the world struggles with email, and we are no exception. We in our retreat, we were talking about this. It's all we can do to keep up with our email. Never mind the day-to-day and the inquiries and the issues that crop up that we have no control over whatsoever, like water tank pump failures. So we're busy. We're doing our best to keep our heads above water, and we do hope to have a better formatted town manager e-news for you soon. Not e-news, monthly report.
Thank you. Any
Thank you.
questions? Are there any committee reports? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Thank you.